on CyberCrime. A mail bomb explodes and investigators are left with fragments. See how U.S. Postal inspectors nailed the suspect by recreating the mailing label.
And you've probably got one in your inbox right now. Email warning you about everything from computer viruses to flesh-eating bacteria in bananas. A look at email hoaxes next.
CyberCrime is brought to you by Symantec.
Hi, welcome to CyberCrime. What a week. We've got a ruling in the Microsoft case. A computer hacker is sentenced, and Attorney General Janet Reno wants to know the best way to fight cybercrime. We'll have the details on those stories in just a few minutes. But first, here's Alex with this week's top story.
A mail bomb explodes, and it's up to U.S. Postal inspectors to pick up the pieces. They turn to a small group of scientists in Dulles, Virginia. It's the Digital Evidence Unit at the National Forensic Laboratory. In part one of this two-part investigation on high-tech mail bombs, get a glimpse into why the country's oldest federal law enforcement agency has a 98% conviction rate in cases brought to trial.
When Rebecca Rowland received the package, she was immediately suspicious. Apollo Drug screen name didn't ring a bell, and her name was misspelled. Instead of opening it, she put it at the corner of her desk and went back to work.
Her supervisor came in later that morning, I guess, and jokingly picked up the article. And it's like, oh, what's this? Is it a bomb? And he picked it up, and they were shaking it like this. And finally, it just sort of, the coin box itself just sort of fell out and flopped on the table again. And at that point, they were starting to open it, and they saw presents orange wires, orange insulated wires, and some pipes, and stopped right there.
It was, in fact, a bomb. The metal coin box concealed two pipes filled with smokeless powder. Activated by a couple of 9-volt batteries, the bomb could have taken out half the building. The U.S. Army Bomb Disposal Unit was immediately on the scene with a robot designed to retrieve the bomb.
You don't know what could happen. The thing could go off accidentally, could go off intentionally. You don't want personnel around there because of the danger.
Just then it began pouring. The bomb unit needed to quickly maneuver the robot and the bomb to a safe area. So the robot moved the bomb to an open square in Waco, Texas, where it was detonated safely. But for investigators, their best evidence was now destroyed. Or was it? The mailing label was still intact.
And when you're a forensic analyst with the Digital Evidence Unit of the United States Postal Inspectors, a label is not just a label. They'll look at everything from the font, to the shading, to the ink, to the content. Let's take a look at what they found.
The chief suspect was Lauren Pierce, estranged husband of the intended victim, Rebecca Rowland. But when postal inspectors confiscated his computer equipment and brought it back to the National Forensic Laboratory in Dulles, Virginia,
a mail label in its entirety did not exist as an entire unit anywhere on the alien systems I examined.
Neither did Modern and Courier, the very two fonts that appeared on the mailing label. And that was suspicious in itself. Both are standard Windows fonts.
There was evidence that at some time the fonts were deleted from the system, and the two fonts were key fonts that were found on the original bomb label.
But Pearson did leave digital clues to the missing fonts on the 1,200 backup floppies confiscated with his computer.
Each and every floppy diskette had to be processed for information, and what we found on these floppy diskettes were actually the fonts that were deleted from the computer system that was used to generate the label.
Investigators also focused on the two dark boxes on the label.
One of the things I had to do is try to find the correct color combination and create the box and look at it under a microscope, see if the dot patterns matched what the original mailing label looked like.
Using Pearson's inkjet printer and his word processor's yellow shading, Patterson hit pay dirt.
When we then viewed that under a microscope, the patterns matched.
And what about the misspelling of Rebecca's name? She only uses one B.
I looked the whole hard drive, and with the software that we have, I said, go out and tell me if there's any name spelling this name, R-E-B-B-E-C-C-A, specifically, with the two B's in there. And it told me to go look in this game called Doom. He had saved the games under REBBCCA, REBCECCA. He had several different spellings of her name on there.
Well, this is the first time that we've ever used digital evidence in a criminal investigation for prosecution purposes, and we're successful in the prosecution.
Then a hair from Pearson's arm turned up on a piece of tape from the bomb. The physical evidence confirmed everything the digital forensic analysts already knew.
It was so overwhelming on there that the defense didn't even call a witness up. And you had to be there, but it was, we had a very strong case against him.
The digital evidence portion of the investigation took nearly 4 months. Then, when it went to trial, a jury took less than 30 minutes to convict Lauren Pearson. Pearson is now serving a 38-year sentence and will not be released before age 85. The intended victim, Rebecca Rowland, was lucky. In that case, investigators were able to detonate the bomb safely. But in February of 1998, one man wasn't so lucky. And when inspectors tracked down the man responsible, the bomb blueprints led back to the net.
He went into the internet, he pulled some internet sites, which gave him some information on how to construct a bomb.
Investigators recovered deleted files showing diagrams, sketches, and step-by-step instructions on how to make bombs. In part 2 of our look at high-tech mail bombs, the digital forensic evidence that sent Dale Carr to prison for 2 life sentences. Okay, now we need your help. We've gotten a lot of feedback on our stories and plenty of suggestions. Let's narrow it down a bit. What type of story would you like to see covered on CyberCrime? If you want to see more stories about computer intrusions or hacking, okay. Maybe you want to know more about how employers monitor employees in the workplace. That's B. How about B? A story about the DVD copyright controversy. And then there's D, a look at the security of online banking. Vote and vote often at our website. You know the address, cybercrime.com. And while you're there, why not try our security scanner? Just click on the icon at the top right-hand side of the page, and our scanner will check your computer for the top 5 viruses like Melissa, Explorzip, or CIH. You can also check your web browser to see if it reveals personal information, such as your email address and the site you last visited. Be sure to post your results that will remain anonymous, and a little later in the show, we'll let you know what information we've collected from others who've used the scanner. Still ahead on CyberCrime, a decision in the Microsoft case. We'll tell you about the next steps and take a look at the week's news and review when we return.
CyberCrime news making headlines this week. A decision in the Microsoft antitrust trial. Guilty. On Monday, the judge issued his conclusions of law. It stated that Microsoft violated the Sherman Act by tying its Internet browser to its Windows operating system. The decision was not all that surprising considering the judge's findings of fact, which determined that Microsoft did wield a monopoly. Also not surprising, the government's reaction to Monday's ruling.
This landmark opinion, and in the history of antitrust, this is indeed a landmark opinion. This opinion will also set the ground rules for enforcement in the information age. It demonstrates once again that no company, no matter how powerful or how successful, can refuse to play by the rules and thwart competition for America's consumers.
Although this is a victory for the DOJ, the decision wasn't entirely in the government's favor. The judge said the government failed to prove that Microsoft's exclusive marketing practices with other companies violated antitrust laws. For its part, Microsoft says it wasn't surprised with Monday's decision, given the court's earlier findings. But that doesn't mean it's ready to admit defeat on any front just yet. Immediately following the ruling, Microsoft announced plans to appeal.
Well, we did everything we could to settle this case, and we'll continue to look for new opportunities to resolve it. We believe we have a strong case on appeal. The appeals court has already affirmed Microsoft's right to build Internet capabilities into the Windows operating system to benefit consumers.
Now we turn to the remedy phase. This could range from mild behavioral restrictions to a complete restructuring of the company. And don't forget about the class action lawsuits against Microsoft. Monday's ruling could bolster claims that Microsoft used its monopoly to illegally drive up the price of Windows. The German hacker believed responsible for the Tribal Flood network is sentenced to 2 years parole. Tribal Flood was one of the programs used in February's distributed denial of service attacks. The 21-year-old German, who uses the name Mixer, denies any involvement in the attacks. His sentence was for earlier offenses in 1998. Well, Saturday marks 2 months since those DOS attacks. The FBI has made no arrests. Now the Bureau wants millions to expand the collection of voice and data transmissions. $15 million would go to Digital Storm, a surveillance system that expands wiretap technology. The information gathered would go to a new $10 million federal database called Casa de Web. It would allow authorities to use web browsers to instantly upload the results of surveillance and other evidence. $41 million would go to the Information Sharing Initiative, a huge data mine linking the FBI's criminal records. A flood of phony 911 calls in Houston has been traced to a new malicious virus. It not only overwrites victims' hard drives, but also puts in a call to emergency services. The National Infrastructure Protection Center says the virus has been found on 4 ISPs, America Online, AT&T, MCI, and NetZero. The FBI and NIPSI are asking victims to immediately report the information relating to use of this script. Attorney General Janet Reno used the Silicon Valley Forum to make a plea to high-tech leaders. Reno wants law enforcement to work closely with the tech industry to protect the net from cybercrime. Industry leaders were asked to submit suggestions on how Reno and the DOJ can help protect companies without stepping on high-tech toes.
We've got to check this. We've got to make sure that we use this window to establish understandings about what government will do in conjunction with the private sector in a partnership, not as adversaries, to make this marvelous new phenomenon a reality of opportunity.
While in Northern California, Reno also spoke with a group of young people about the importance of cyber ethics. Well, a groundbreaking high-tech legal ruling. Encryption is protected by the First Amendment. The Federal Appeals Court has ruled that computer encryption programs used to scramble electronic messages are protected under free speech. That's because the codes are a method of communication among programmers. To learn more about this important ruling, go to cybercrime.com. Well, there's still much more ahead on cybercrime.
In the last 5 years, we've seen hundreds of hoaxes.
You've probably received an email like this one. How do you know if it's something you really need to worry about? We'll sort through popular email hoaxes making the rounds next. But first, test your history knowledge in this week's Cybercrime Timeline. 2600, the Hacker Quarterly is founded. Ronald Reagan is reelected in a landslide, and photographer Ansel Adams died. So when did it all happen? Was the year 1980, 1984, or 1988? We'll be back after a short break with the answer.
Back to that timeline. 2600, the Hacker Quarterly is founded. Ronald Reagan is reelected in a landslide, and Ansel Adams died. It all happened in 1984. Okay, now from fact to fiction. Computer hoaxes have been around since the late 1980s. Warnings about viruses that don't exist. Prizes you can win by forwarding an email to thousands of people. These days, hoaxes are just part of the internet. Sometimes they're even a little funny. But in this week's Consumer Alert, you'll see why some security experts aren't laughing.
In the last 5 years, we've seen hundreds of hoaxes.
Bill Orvis is a security specialist for the Department of Energy. His team at SEAC, the Computer Incident Advisory Capability, investigates hoax emails for the government. Like the email claiming that flesh-eating bacteria had been found in bananas shipped from Costa Rica. The message was a hoax, but it prompted the Center for Disease Control to note the bacteria cannot survive long on the surface of a banana. Kentucky Fried Chicken doesn't use real chickens. The Gap will send you a pair of cargo pants for every email you forward. The post office plans to start charging postage for email messages. And if you send a message to 13,000 people, they can win a free trip to Disney World.
Email hoaxes may look innocent enough. All they really seem to do is waste people's time. But the security experts here at the Department of Energy say those hoaxes aren't as harmless as you think.
Orbis is one of 15 security specialists at SEAC, and he says hoaxes started causing real problems for his team a few years ago.
We were spending probably close to 90% of our time answering questions about hoaxes. And it was definitely getting out of control at that point. And that's why our hoax site was built, was to give us back some time to work on real incidents and real viruses.
SEAC's website lists more than 30 of the most popular email hoaxes.
The website very definitely has helped a lot. The number of calls we've had to make has gone down significantly.
Still, even with the website, the frantic messages do keep coming in.
Every day I get a number of emails. It could range anywhere from maybe 10, 20 a day to maybe 50. It depends on what the hoax du jour is.
Rose Miller handles the SEAC hotline. That means dealing with a very nervous public.
All of this is new. They're frightened that they're going to ruin their computer if they read this email. Something bad is going to happen if they don't forward this on to, all their friends, everybody they know. They panic. They literally panic out there.
Government experts aren't the only ones dealing with worried callers.
There are hundreds and hundreds of hoaxes, and we've only kept track of the virus hoaxes, and I would say there are a few hundred virus hoaxes.
Antivirus companies like Symantec have also seen the panic an email hoax can cause.
We have actually had cases where a company has shut down their mail servers because they were worried about a hoax. And later on, they found out it was a hoax, and we lost a full day's worth of productivity because they shut down their mail servers.
If you have web access and you get something that concerns you, before you send it to all your friends, go to the SEAC site, go to your antivirus site. Just about every single antivirus site has a hoax area now, and see if the hoax is there.
Even if it's not, think twice about forwarding the message.
We had hoped people would get tired of this stuff and would stop sending these things around, but it's not happening. We're seeing more and more hoaxes out on the net every day. We're seeing new types of hoaxes. We're seeing variants on old hoaxes. And we expect to see more of the same over the next few years.
So funny. We get these things all the time, Luke. What are some of the sure signs that this is an email hoax?
There are definitely a few telltale signs. One of them is technical-sounding language, which is almost always included in these emails. A great example is the Good Times virus hoax, which says that it's going to put your processor in an nth complexity infinite binary loop, which sounds daunting enough, except that it doesn't exist. The other thing that they usually do in these emails is they try to get some credibility by association. We saw that in the banana bacteria hoax, where the Center for Disease Control was allegedly the source where this was coming from, except that they really had no knowledge of it.
Very tricky stuff. Another thing that you observe in these email hoaxes, they claim to be able to track who you forward it to, like in the Gap one, you get a cargo pants every time you forward to someone. Obviously, they can't do that. They don't have the technology to do that.
Clearly a red flag that you want to check out whether or not that's a hoax. Earlier in the show, we promised to take a closer look at some of the information we collected from our CyberCrime security scanner. Take a look at these stats. Over 2,000 of you have used the scanner so far, and according to the results, only 21% of you have a personal firewall, 95% don't have a web filter that blocks adult-related material, and 59% of you aren't running updated antivirus software. And that's an easy one. Update those antivirus definitions, because each day we're seeing more and more viruses. Also, keep in mind that if you're running the scanner at work, it cannot check for a corporate firewall. But that's a good question for your IT department. Coming up on CyberCrime.
What's going to happen to all this information? Who's going to collect all this information? Which database is it going to go into eventually?
Can you put a price tag on your personal information? Annalisa Savage takes a critical look at privacy online in this week's Chaos Theory. But first, let's see if you have a knack for our favorite game. It's time for Hack or Hoax. In January 1999, hackers replaced the website for the movie Varsity Blues with an anti-MTV critique. So what do you think? Did that really happen and it's a hack? Or did we make it up and it's a hoax? Think about it. We'll be back shortly with the answer.
or hoax? What do you think? Did hackers place the website for the movie Varsity Blues with an anti-MTV critique? Yep, that's a hack. It happened just about 2 weeks after the movie premiered. This was the first of a series of hacks by an anti-MTV, anti-bad movie group. The group even urged people to join them for an IRC chat. So, how much is your personal information worth? Let's see, your name, address, phone number, likes, dislikes. What are you willing to get in exchange? How about a new computer or a discount, maybe better fitting clothes? Annalisa Savage, who produced a series of documentaries on the underground hacker culture and privacy online, says the ease at which information is traded on the net has changed the rules. Who will control all that data one day? Here's her Chaos Theory.
So, in the information age, there's information being treated all over the place. You have, say, websites like Amazon.com that's tracking your information every time you buy a book. You have someone like Levi's who is asking for your fingerprints so that they know exactly what size jeans that you fit. You have Safeway that's tracking everything that you buy in their establishment. What's going to happen to all this information? Who's going to collect all this information? Which database is this going to go into eventually? I don't know. Right now, we live in a democracy, but does that mean in 20 years' time we're going to? So in the future, if we have a huge infrastructure for data, then someone could use that data for evil instead of for good. I think everyone needs to be really careful about what they do with their information. Don't just give your information out. Use encryption and make sure that you're not trading your right to freedom for some convenient and some cheap consumer goods.
So that's it for another episode of CyberCrime. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you here next week at the same time. By the way, thanks for all the feedback on the show and some great story ideas. Keep the suggestions coming. Email us at cybercrime@zdtv.com and visit us at the website at cybercrime.com. We'll see you in the chat room Monday between 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, so long.